Hey there, it's Steve from Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gained. And this time we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're actually going to be reviewing a board game, something I've been meaning to get back into doing. And this time we're getting into Dungeon Doors. Dungeon Doors is an asymmetrical, cooperative, one versus many type of game. It's kind of a rules-like game akin to heroes going into the dungeon and the door master trying to slay the heroes for their impudence to defeat the dungeon monsters. So this is up to 2 to 6 players, so you can have up to 5 delvers of the dungeon and 1 door master who controls all the denizens of the deep. We're going to go over kind of how to play it. Is it something that you should pick up? Just for clarity's sake, I had purchased this with my own money. I don't have any relationship to the company. The company is Dynamic Guerrilla Games. I saw an ad for this and I'm like, oh, that seems to be a kind of cool game. So, like I said, I'm going to give you my thoughts on it, kind of give you a little bit of how to play the game and seeing if it's up your alley. To the table! All right, so obviously you're going to get the box. And in the box, you're going to have all the things you need to play the games. You get the little rule book, which you're going to look at in a second. We get some D6s and some D20s. We get all the cards that come with the game in a nice little deck box. And we also get a tutorial, which is kind of nice for them to include. So one of the first things you're going to look at is the hero cards. These are what the players are going to draw from. Now the rules say to draw randomly, but I don't think there'd be a problem for you to draw these if you wanted to choose, but the rules do say draw randomly. This is what the heroes are going to use to represent their characters in the dungeon. So as you see, there's cool little art style here. If we can get this to focus in. The Furbolg Druid. And you're going to notice a couple of information on this card. You're going to have all the characters' stats down the side. This is your to hit value. This is how much damage, extra damage you deal. This is your hit points. If this goes to 0, you die. This is your armor class, what is required to hit you. And the star is number of heroic ability points you have to power your heroic abilities to be awesome. We have a hero trait. This is a passive effect that stays on throughout the game. Heroic ability we just talked about. There's certain times in the game where you can activate this to activate your special power, and each one is going to be different. And we have the proficiencies, which we're going to get to when we talk about items. So there is a variety of characters. We have the half-orc barbarian, raw, fighting stuff. And the artwork is really, really cool. Some of the passives are detriments, and this character is a kind of example of that. You can never be party leader. That party leader is effectively the first player marker. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. We have the Croaker Pirate. And he also has a slightly detrimental hero trait, but well, like I said, we can get into that. While we have the Gerblin Mechanic, the Minotaur Wizard. And then they go on. We're not going to look through them. The Tiefling Warlock. So you see some of the standard tropes and some of the, the Dwarven Paladin is proficient with booze, because why wouldn't they be? So they're going to pick one of these cards, and that's what they're going to use to represent their character in the dungeon. Some characters get access to companions. Companions are they act kind of like heroes, and they kind of act on the person's turn who has access to the companion, and they act like a second hero. And some of the stats they use from your card, and some of the stats they use from their card, and they have different abilities. If you happen to get a companion and die, your companion will fight for you until they cannot fight any longer. They are like a second character. Like I said, and it'll tell you on your card if you get access to companions. And we saw the druid, the Furbolg Druid got access to summons, because they can summon creatures. Summons work as basically they come in, they do their special power, and then they dip out. Yet again, requiring you to use your special ability there. So there's 3 different ones of these. This is just in the base game. You have Stampy, the Angry Pachyderm, the Lesser the Long Baby. And we have these 3 cards. Like I said, there's the card will kind of tell you if you give access to it. Afterlife cards. There is something after death in this game. So if you happen to die and you have other people that are still playing, you can basically get taken it over by some spirit. And obviously, if you look at some of the flavor text, you'll notice that some of this is very tongue-in-cheek humor. The artwork is really nice on these cards. And you'll notice, even if you look through the rulebook, there is a type of humor that comes with the game and is not to be taken as a serious game. And it lets you do things on your turn when you would take a turn. Sometimes it helps the players, sometimes it hurts the players. And we have just reference cards for all the different people, tell you what all the abilities do and how to play the game. And when certain abilities happen is one for every player. There is the item cards, and we're going to go over that proficiency that we mentioned before. All the items, every character is allowed to have one weapon, one piece of armor, and one item. So here's a weapon. There's more weapons. Let's see if we can get an item. Here's some armor. Snail mail. Here's an item card. So when you look at the item cards, there'll be some flavor text here, kind of give you a little bit of information about the item and maybe some jokes. You'll have the weapon effect, or in this case, this is a weapon. You have the item's effect. In this case, it's +1 damage and +1 to attack. Oh, that's really good. But if you're proficient, you get this extra effect. So that's what the proficiencies mean. So some of these items will be good for some characters, but really good for other characters. So you got to check your proficiencies when you're looking at items. So it can really affect what these different items can do. As you see here, the Jester's leather armor gets a whole bunch of, you get +1 armor. Anyone wearing it +1 armor, and then you get that special effect if you're proficient in this medium armor. And then same thing with the hemp rope. It has a proficiency, it has a basic effect, and that proficient effect, which generally means good things for the players. And then we get to the Door Master. These are the cards for the Door Master. What they will do is they place these cards face down. They have a hand of 5 of these cards. We have a hand of 5 of these cards, and we place 3 of them face down to represent the floor of the dungeon. And then the players must excavate the different doors to try to get out of the dungeon. Now, they are trying to find one of these cards, which is an exit card. They're trying to, at least one player escapes the dungeon through an exit, all the party members win the game. If you all die, the Doormaster claims victory upon your corpses. So obviously we have similar stats for the monsters. Monsters sometimes have effects or traits that can affect combat. And sometimes there are multiple monsters. So some of these creatures have multiple versions of themselves. There we go, the red-eyed mice. When you encounter the red-eyed mice, you roll a d6. That's how many mice you will battle. But they are pretty squishy with only 5 health. But they are pretty hard to hit with a 15 AC. Keep in mind, you're rolling to hit. You're rolling at D20, so 15 is pretty high. Like I said, so all of the heroes are working together completely cooperatively against the Doormaster. Like I said, there is an included tutorial on how to basically, this is a quick start guide on how to play the game. It kind of goes out and it kind of tells you what cards from the special deck. You'll notice that the special tutorial cards have a different back, and they are numbered, and they tell you what order you play them in and what kind of order you encounter them in. This really just kind of teaches you how to play if you wanted to learn by doing instead of just reading the rule book. You can either way. We haven't actually played the tutorial, but I did read through the quick start guide. It is a nice addition. This wasn't any extra. This comes with the base version of the game. But yeah, the quick start guide. And like I said, you get 2 D6s and 2 D20s here, part of the game. So, how this game is played, well, let's say we're playing a 3-player game, so one person is going to be the Doormaster, and 2 people are going to play heroes, and let's say we randomly dealt out that we have the half-orc fighter, the half-ogre fighter, and the halfling rogue. And as you notice, the halfling rogue's base ability starts them with a specific treasure card. Now, some characters start with a treasure card. In this case, they start with the Dagger of Stabbing. So it's an item they are proficient with, and they always start with that item. It doesn't mean they can't lose it. There are some ways that they can lose items or trade items with other players. And the half ogre fighter's heroic hero trait is specifically you can't form words because you're dumb, because you're an ogre. You're specifically a half ogre. If you try to actually form words, you take damage, which is kind of gives you an idea of the tongue-in-cheek humor of this game. And then the battle begins. So you'll have to track your health, and then you track your hero points, your heroic abilities, and then the Door Master will draw 5 of the dungeon cards. Now I'm going to shuffle these up. So as the Door Master, I'm going to draw 5 of these cards, and I get to look at them because I'm the sneaky Door Master. And as you see, there are different types of rooms here. So there are 40 cards in the door deck, and the dungeon door deck. There are 4 different types of doors, 10 of each of them. So we have the exit cards. These are what the heroes are looking for, but exit isn't easy. So a lot of these doors have a requirement that may require some, if not all, the players to be involved in trying to escape the dungeon. And then we have obstacles. These are just bad news all around. So sometimes it'll tell you all heroes roll, which means all heroes are involved in the obstacle. Other rooms, you will have the party leader roll. Sometimes it'll tell you the party leader to assign a player. And they will have to do whatever's in the card. Sometimes it may require them to take damage. Sometimes they get bonus treasure cards. Just you have to follow what's on the card. Then you have a monster of some description. And there are a variety of monsters in the game. And this is one we looked at before, when you fight a number of red-eyed mice. And there are the stats right there. And then there are all the treasure rooms. There are treasure rooms where the players have opportunities to locate treasure, albeit sometimes at some risk. Sometimes you'll see something on the bottom of the card where it says after you interact with the room becomes dangerous. There is a potential that players could try to backtrack through the dungeon to try to either find more loot, or maybe they missed the door, that they were somewhere in the dungeon and they must backtrack. So some rooms are dangerous, means they can pass through without issue. Some are impassable, which means they are, sometimes they are treacherous, which means, like this room, they must repeat this treacherous room every time they walk through the door. And then some rooms are impassable, which means once they attempt it, once the card says it becomes impassable, it cannot be passed through again. The Door Master draws 5 of these cards, and they will always have 5 cards in their hand. So anytime that they play cards, they draw back up to 5. And a Door Master has an opportunity to mulligan on the first turn of the game, but then must enjoy their cards from that point forward. And they must place 3 doors for the party to investigate, and that is the floor that the players are on. So let's put this sneaky card down here. Let's put this sneaky card down here. And let's put that sneaky card down there. So now, whoever the party leader, let's say the party leader is the halfling rogue. And they say, I want to fight this. I want to find out what's in this door. They fight the bridge troll. Now, the bridge troll is an interesting creature because the bridge troll will choose to fight you unless you pay him with a magic item. So this is sometimes what I'm saying, that you could potentially lose magic items. So they don't want to fight the bridge troll because he has 85 hit points and he can do some nasty things. So let's say that the rogue is just going to forfeit their treasure, their item here, and that goes back into the pile of the deck. And then you have since effectively defeated, not really defeated, but you've satiated the bridge troll's appetite for treasure. But if you encounter this room again and you have not defeated him, then you must pay another item or start a fight. So now, that is the halfling rogue's turn. Now they can choose to use their heroic abilities if it's applicable. Same thing with the half ogre fighter if their ability is active. Anytime in between turns, players can choose to use the heroic abilities. Remember, they are limited to a number of ability uses by that blue number there, the star number. So the next thing is, now it goes over to the half ogre fighter. Now there's a choice. You can either flip over one of these other cards or force the Door Master to put the next level of dungeon into play. And that's what, let's say that we want to burn through some of the cards because we're assuming that these are the most nastiest cards that the Door Master can muster. And we're going to move these up here for a moment. And let's say the half ogre fighter says, no, I want to see the next level. These 3 cards go down, so they still remain in play because, like I said before, it's entirely possible that you must backtrack, put 3 more cards down. Now, once these cards are dealt out, You can't choose then to go into this level. You must choose, the active player who asks for the new floor must draw a card from this floor before choices are made to backtrack down if this so desired. Okay. So the half ogre fighter chooses this door, flips it over. Ah, it's a treasure room. But the item is horribly cursed. So they can choose to draw an item from the treasure deck, but they also take 5 points of damage while doing so. And once if the item is ever taken, the room becomes dangerous and there's no more item to be had in this room. So let's say they're willing to take the 5 damage and they pull a treasure card, and the half ogre fighter pulls a giant toes nail, a giant's toenail as a shield. And fun enough, the fighter, the half ogre fighter, is proficient in shield, so they get both effects. They get +3 to their armor. You cannot use a weapon while wielding this shield, but if equipable, but if you're proficient, you're really good at using shields. So in this case, you can bypass the penalty of you cannot wield a weapon. So once the half ogre fighter equips a weapon, they can use a weapon and the shield at the same time, even though the shield is giant sized. So that goes with the fighter. And then they took the 5 damage. They would mark the 5 damage down. I generally kind of move this to the side to denote that or put a token on it to denote that the item was taken. And now it goes back to the rogue. And you keep going through this until either all the heroes die or the heroes find that illustrious exit and escape the dungeon. Combat is pretty easy. We're just going to use this as an example. We're going to get rid of all this for a second. We're just going to assume that a combat broke out. And let's say that the rogue didn't give up their dagger, and they kept their dagger and decided to fight the bridge troll. So we have the heroes versus the bridge troll. And the way combat works, combat's pretty easy. So first things first, you got to figure out initiative. Everyone rolls a d20. And doesn't add anything to it unless you get an item that adds something to it. Everyone rolls a d20, the highest goes first, and then you just clockwise from there. So the rogue will roll initiative, they roll a 16, the half ogre fighter will roll, he rolls a 19, and the monster rolls, and he gets a 17. So the fighter will go first, and then clockwise around will be the bridge troll, and then back to the rogue, and then until one side is defeated. So how to attack. So if you wanted to use an item, you would use the item instead. If you want to use your power, some powers require you to take your whole turn to use the power. And then some cases, that's part of your attack. So here, the heroic ability for the fighter isn't going to be something that we're going to use in this fight, but it lets him it lets him damage a second target with his damage roll by spending one of those points that we have here. But it was only fighting one thing, so we're just going to fight. So we're going to roll, and we add 5 plus this green number, which is 7, which does not defeat the AC of the bridge troll, so we miss. And then the bridge troll will choose to attack somebody, so the DM will decide, since you have the shield, I'm going to try to take out the rogue first. So the bridge troll is going to attack. It rolls a 15, and it has a +5. It's a very meaty attack. So it does damage, and then we roll a d6. Most damage is done in d6s, and it's 2, but we have to do +3, that's 5 points of damage to the rogue, and the rogue only has 8 hit points, so the rogue's not doing really well right now. And then the rogue will attack back. It rolls a 5 +4, it's a total of 9, but we have this +1, so it's actually 10. It still doesn't defeat the 12 of the AC, and we keep going around and around and around until one side is completely knocked out, and either the monster is defeated or the heroes are defeated. Okay. Do I think this is a good game? I think this is a good game for people, for if you're a gamer, if your entire group is filled with hardcore gamers and people who play role-playing games. People who play role-playing games are going to get a lot of the jokes that are in here. And the game is still fun even if you don't get some of the references in here. But the references are slated in that D&D / kind of fantasy role-playing world. And as you see with the, Furbolg Druid and the Gerblin. So this is very much rooted in that fantasy genre. But I think this is a great game for people who are starting out learning how to play D&D, or if you're a seasoned gamer and you want to have a game that introduces some of these concepts to your role-playing group and you just got on to play role-playing, but like, look, tonight's the board game night. So you can pull out this. This is a really quick game. It says 20 to 40 minutes. The game goes pretty quick. It's not a complicated game. It goes through. You only have to worry about 3 or 4 cards for most of the player characters. As the Doormaster, the cards are pretty clear of which ones are worse than others. So, even though that rat card, they're not that hard to defeat, but sometimes you're going to roll at 6, you're going to have 6 of those little dudes rolling around, and it's going to take some time for the heroes to defeat them, but then the heroes can uniquely use their powers to mitigate some of the problems. So, is this something that's going to pique the fancy of most hardcore gamers? Probably not, but you're going to get a couple of laughs, you're going to get a couple of chuckles out of this game. But this is a nice filler game, and it's also a nice introduction to board/card games for people who are trying to introduce new players to board games and card games, or like I said, some of the players are just new to role-playing games. You want to wet their whistle with a couple of little inside jokes. I think this is a good pickup. It's not that expensive for board games. It comes with all you need to do. There is expansions. I don't actually have the expansions. There's also a little neoprene mat set that you can get to kind of figure out where the cards are laid out. But the rule book is really clear on the rules, and it shows you exactly how to play and what you need to do. And yeah, I think this is a solid pickup. Like I said, obviously, if you're a group of seasoned gamers, maybe this is a pass. I still think it's a nice little cute game that you can, and obviously it's very small footprint, doesn't take up a lot of space. But yeah, that's my review of Dungeon Doors. If you like the game or you don't like the game, send us a comment down below. But until then, this is Steve from Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gained. May all your die rolls be crits, and may you always roll max damage. See you later.